Hey everyone. I don't know why I'm writing this. I guess just to get it off my chest, to put it somewhere people won't think I'm crazy. Or maybe, just maybe, someone who knows what I saw will stumble across this post. Or maybe this is just me screaming into the void. I'm typing this from my work computer, glancing up at the monitors every few seconds. My hands are still shaking. I'm not usually the type to post online. I'm more of a lurker. But after last night, I can't just let this go. I need someone else to know about this, even if it sounds insane. First, some context. My name is, well, that doesn't matter. Just call me the caretaker. For the last 2 years, I've been the off-season caretaker at the White Summit Ski Resort. It's a pretty popular place in the winter, but from late April to early November, it's a ghost town. My job is to live here, in a small maintenance cabin at the base of the main slope, and make sure nothing gets stolen or busted. Basically, I'm a security guard for a massive, empty world of mountains, pines, and steel. The work's easy, honestly. During the day, I do my rounds. Check the locks on the lifts, look over the rental shop, the main lodge. At night, my kingdom is the monitoring room. Dozens of cameras scattered across the resort. The parking lot, the base station, the summit station, a few key points on the slopes. Mostly I just drink cheap coffee, watch movies on my laptop, and scan the flickering black and white screens every 10 minutes. 99% of the time, nothing happens but pine trees dancing in the wind and the occasional flurry of snow. Yeah, we can get snow even in June. That's the mountains for you. The solitude never bothered me. In fact, that's why I took this job. After a few rough years in the city, this silence and isolation felt like heaven. It's just you and the mountain. Nobody else for miles. The nearest town, Pine Creek, is an hour's drive down a winding mountain road, and it has a population of maybe 300 people. Perfect. The weirdness started about a month ago. It was all so small that I chalked it up to fatigue or my imagination playing tricks on me. Sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I'd think I saw something flicker on one of the monitors showing a distant slope. Something big and dark. But when I'd look closer, nothing. Just shadows from the clouds. Or I'd hear strange sounds. The wind in the mountains is creepy enough on its own. It whistles through the lift cables, moans in the lodge's ventilation shafts. But this was different. A deep, guttural howl, not like a wolf or a bear. It was too low, too deliberate. I'd step outside, listen to the cold air, but I'd only hear the whisper of the wind. Then the tracks started appearing in the snow. We'd just gotten a fresh dusting, and during my morning rounds, I found them at the edge of the woods, not far from the bunny slope. They were huge. I wear a size 12 boot, and this print was easily twice the size of mine. And the shape? Not a bear. Too long, almost human, but with definite claws. The strangest part was that the trail of prints just stopped in the middle of a clearing, as if the thing that made them had just taken off into the air. I took some pictures on my phone, but they came out blurry and useless. On the screen, they just looked like weird holes in the snow. I showed them to the only person I really talk to, Old Man Hector, who brings me supplies from Pine Creek once a week. He looked, chewed on his ever-present cigar, and said, "Mountains are big, son. All sorts of things live in them. Best not to poke your nose where it doesn't belong." I tried to listen to him. Tried to convince myself it was just some undocumented species of mutant elk or something. But the feeling of being watched never went away. I started staring at the monitors more intently, cycling through cameras, zooming in. It felt like the mountain was watching me, that there was something in the darkness between the pines. And then came last night. It started out normal. Heavy snow, the wind howling so loud it sounded like something was scratching at the walls of my cabin. I made myself another cup of the instant coffee I've come to despise and put on some old action movie. Around 2 a.m., I did my usual sweep of the cameras. Parking lot, empty. Main lodge entrance, snowed in. Summit restaurant, a dark silhouette against the blizzard. Camera 7, midway up the main slope. And that's when I froze. Something was moving. At first I thought it was a deer. They come down from the high country sometimes. But this wasn't deer. There were a lot of them, at least a dozen. They were moving as a pack, fast and coordinated. The picture quality was garbage because of the snow. But even through the static, I could see they were running on all fours. But they weren't wolves. They were too big, too massive. Their movements were jerky, unnatural, with a vicious, human-like purpose to them. They were charging up the slope, against the wind, kicking up plumes of snow. I switched to camera 9, higher up the slope. A few seconds later, the pack appeared there. I could see them a little better now. They were covered in dark, shaggy fur, but you could see powerful, almost human-like musculature underneath. Their faces were long like a wolf's, but short and brutal at the same time, like a pit bull's. And their eyes, even on the grainy black and white image, I could see them glowing. 24 white, hungry points of light in the snowy gloom. And then I realized they were hunting something. I frantically started switching cameras, trying to get ahead of them to see their prey. Camera 11, camera 12, right at the summit. And there, framed against the upper lift terminal, I saw it. It was huge, at least 10 feet tall. Thick, dark fur covered its entire body. It was standing on 2 legs, breathing hard, its breath pluming in thick clouds. It had the shape of a gorilla but the build of a bear, and it moved with a human-like grace. Its arms were long and incredibly powerful. It was wounded. A dark patch was spreading across its shoulder. The creature turned, looked down the slope at the approaching lights, and I saw its face. It wasn't an ape's face. There was something ancient in it, something wise and infinitely tired. No malice, just fear and desperation. Bigfoot, Yeti, Sasquatch. I don't know what to call it. In that moment, all those dumb names from TV shows felt like a sacrilege. I was looking at a living, intelligent being that had been run to ground. It was backing up toward the station building. The pack was close now, fanning out across the snow, surrounding it. I sat there in my warm little booth, hundreds of feet below, watching it like a horror movie. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would break out of my chest. I was just a spectator. The giant retreated until its back was against the station wall. It let out a roar. I couldn't hear it, but I saw it. The camera shook from the vibration. A small cascade of snow fell from the station roof. The creatures paused for a moment. But then, driven by some unseen leader, they charged again. The first one lunged from the side. The giant swatted it away with its massive arm. A swing so powerful I could hear a dull crunch even through the wind howling into the camera's microphone. The thing flew several feet and didn't move again. But then 3 more were on it, sinking their teeth into its legs, tearing at fur and flesh. It roared, trying to shake them off, but they held on like pit bulls. Then it did something I never expected. It turned, jumped, and grabbed a steel support beam on the station's roof, heaving its massive body up in one incredible motion. It was done with the kind of ease an athlete uses to pull themselves onto a high bar. The wolves, I'll just call them that for simplicity's sake, though they weren't wolves, were left below, barking and snapping furiously, trying to get to it. I thought it was safe. I was wrong. The roof was sloped, covered in ice and snow. There was nothing to hold on to. And worse, it was on the part of the building that housed the lift machinery. Right over a sheer drop. The pack wasn't giving up. A few of them started scrambling up the wall, their claws finding purchase on the metal siding. It was a terrifying sight. They were climbing like giant spiders. The giant on the roof kicked at them, but its position was precarious. It was slipping, and I could see it wouldn't last long. And then I saw what it was doing. Near it, right on the edge of the roof, was one of the gondola cars. They get parked in the terminal for the night. It was attached to the cable but hadn't been fully moved into the garage. It crawled over, wrapped its enormous hands around it, and began to rock it. The metal groaned and protested. The things on the wall were almost there. One of them had its front paws over the edge of the roof. And in that moment, the giant, with one last, desperate roar, tore the gondola car from its mooring. You have to understand what these cars are. They aren't light little plastic boxes. They're huge structures of steel and plexiglass, weighing hundreds of pounds. And it was holding it in its hands. The cable it was attached to went taut like a guitar string, and then snapped with a deafening crack. It now had a weapon. A giant flail on a broken length of cable. It swung. The gondola car whistled through the air and slammed into the side of the station, right where the creatures were climbing. I couldn't see the details, just a spray of something dark. When it pulled the weapon back, there was nothing left on the wall but dents and crimson stains. The wolves below howled in fury. They lunged at the walls again and again, but kept their distance now. The giant stood on the edge of the roof, breathing heavily, clutching the mangled gondola car. It was trapped. It had won a moment, but not the battle. It couldn't get down, and staying on that icy roof in a blizzard was suicide. It was slowly freezing and bleeding to death. I sat there watching, paralyzed by a mix of horror and a strange, wild awe. And then my eyes fell on the lift control panel. It was right in front of me, the big red emergency start button and a few levers. An idea hit me. The cable. The main haul rope for the lift. It was still in place. The gondola cars farther down the slope were still on it. If I started the lift, the cars would start moving up. One of them would pass right by the station, just a few yards from the roof where it stood. If it could make the jump, it could ride it. Ride it down to the tree line and escape. And this, guys, is where I've been sitting for hours. Because the moment I had that thought, I realized something else. Starting the lift isn't a silent process. The engines will groan to life, the huge bull wheels will screech as they start to turn. It would be like setting off a siren in the middle of the night. That whole pack, they would know instantly where the sound was coming from. They would know someone was helping their prey. And they would know where that someone was. My cabin is basically a wooden box with glass windows. Against a dozen furious creatures that just climbed a sheer metal wall, I don't stand a chance. They'd tear this place to shreds in a minute. My only escape route is the snowmobile, but I'd have to run 50 yards across open ground to get to it. They'd be faster. So, here's my choice. Option A. I do nothing. I just sit here and watch as this incredible, ancient creature slowly dies on a rooftop from the cold, its wounds, and the teeth of those things. I'll be safe. In the morning, they'll be gone. I'll go outside, and no one will ever know. Except me. For the rest of my life, I'll see it freezing up there. looking down at its killers. Option B. I push the button. I give it a chance. Maybe it escapes. But in doing so, I'm almost certainly signing my own death warrant. Those things will leave it and come straight here. Straight for me. The snow on the monitor, around the mangled bodies at the base of the station, isn't white anymore. It's red. I've started calling it the night of red snow. I'm looking at the screen. The giant is still there. It's barely moving, huddled down, holding the torn gondola car like a shield. The points of light below are still there. They're waiting. They're patient. What do I do? I don't know what to do. I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy who wanted some peace and quiet. Update 1, approximately 45 minutes later. Thanks to everyone who replied. I didn't expect such a fast response. Reading your comments, my hands are shaking even more. Some of you are saying to call the cops. Seriously, guys? What would I tell them? Hi, yeah, we've got a Sasquatch on the roof fighting off werewolves with a gondola car. They'd have me committed before I finished the sentence. Besides, the nearest sheriff is in Pine Creek. It would take him 3 hours to get up here in this blizzard if he can even make it. It'll all be over by then. Someone suggested barricading myself in. I've done what I can. Shoved my desk against the door, jammed a crowbar in the window frame. But it's just kidding myself. I saw how they climbed that wall. This wooden door isn't going to stop them. A lot of you are saying to push the button. That the life of an intelligent being is more important. You're right, in theory. But when your own life is on the line, theory kind of goes out the window. It's easy to be a hero when you're sitting in a warm apartment 1,000 miles away. I looked at the monitor again. It moved. Very slowly, with visible effort, it lifted its head and looked directly at the camera. I know it's crazy. It couldn't see me. It's just a piece of metal and glass on a pole. But it felt like it was looking right into my soul. There was no pleading in its eyes. Just that same endless cosmic exhaustion. Like it was saying, I know you're there and I know you won't do anything. Nobody ever does anything. And that just broke something inside me. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the last of its kind. Maybe it's just a lost animal. But it's fighting for its life. And I'm just sitting here, shaking in my boots. The wolves below are getting more active too. They're starting to creep toward the station again. It looks like their patience is running out. I don't think I have a choice anymore. Not because I'm a hero, but because I won't be able to live with myself if I don't at least try. If I die, let this post be a record. There are monsters at White Summit Resort. And not all of them are the bad guys. I'm going to push the button. If you don't hear from me in 15 minutes, I guess I made the wrong choice. Goodbye. Update 2. Approximately 20 minutes later. I'm alive. For now. Oh my God, I'm alive. I did it. I pushed the button. The sound was deafening. Even over the wind, I heard the low, protesting groan from the generators, then a shudder and a screech as the massive machinery lurched into motion. My whole console vibrated. On the monitor, I saw the wolves react instantly. Every head snapped in my direction down the slope. Their glowing eyes stared right at me. They knew, but the giant reacted too. It stirred, rising to its full height, watching the moving cable. I put it on the slowest setting to give it time. The first empty gondola car started its slow crawl up the slope, swaying in the wind. The wolves howled. It wasn't a howl. It was a shriek of pure, undiluted hatred. A few of them charged up the slope toward the moving car, but most of them bolted downhill, towards me. I saw them on camera 9 streaking across the snow, nothing but black blurs. They were impossibly fast. I switched back to camera 12. The gondola was approaching the station. The giant was poised on the very edge of the roof, having tossed aside its makeshift weapon. It was getting ready. The distance was considerable, a good 15 or 20 feet, and that's not even counting the wind and the swaying. Below it, the remaining wolves were going insane, leaping and snapping their jaws. This was it, the moment of truth. The car drew even with it. It crouched, coiled its body, and leaped. It was a jump that defied the laws of physics. That massive body soared through the air, arms outstretched. For one terrifying second, I thought it was going to fall short. But it didn't. It slammed into the side of the gondola with enough force to spin it nearly 90 degrees. The plexiglass cracked. It clung to the metal frame and somehow managed to haul its body inside through the shattered window. It was safe. The gondola car began its slow descent, carrying it away from death. I yelled in triumph. I did it! I saved it! And then I heard a scraping sound. Not from the monitor, from right outside my door. They were here. I killed the power to the lift. Silence fell, broken only by the howl of the wind and a heavy, ragged breathing just outside. I'm looking at the monitor for my own front door. I can't see anything but darkness and swirling snow. But I know they're there. Then came a bang. The whole door shuddered. Then another, and another. They're trying to break it down. The wood is splintering. The desk I'd braced against it just slid a few inches. I don't know how much time I have. Minutes. Maybe seconds. I'm typing this because there's nothing else I can do. I'm looking at the other monitors. The gondola with the giant is slowly descending toward the tree line. It's almost there. I hope it'll be okay. It's a strange thought. I'm about to die, and I'm worried about a monster I've only ever seen on a screen. Another crash. A loud one. The lock won't hold. The post ends here? There have been no further updates. The user account, deleted, has been inactive since the day of this post. Local news reports from the Pine Creek area during that time mentioned no incidents at the White Summit Ski Resort, aside from a note that a severe spring blizzard damaged a power line, causing a temporary outage. Officially, the caretaker position at the resort became vacant a few weeks later, when the previous employee failed to check in at the end of his contract and was presumed to have simply left without notifying management. His personal belongings were never recovered. Story 2. My name is Adam, Dr. Adam Wright, to be precise. I'm 38 and I'm an archaeologist. Not the whip and fedora temple raiding type. My job is dirt, sweat, patience, and meticulous documentation. I spend months under a scorching sun or in a biting wind, brushing dust off pottery shards and bones with a brush that costs more than my dinner. And I love it. Loved it. Until recently. It all started 3 months ago. I'd secured a grant to survey a series of under-researched burial mounds in the foothills of North America. I won't name the specific location, sorry. First, it's a breach of professional ethics. Second, and more importantly, I don't want anyone going there. Ever. The place was wild, isolated. The nearest town, a sleepy little spot with one bar and a gas station, was an hour's drive down a gravel road. My team consisted of 4 people. Me, 2 enthusiastic grad students named Kate and Leo, and a local guide, an elderly Native American man named Joseph, Joe, Running Wolf. Joe was a quiet, stern man who knew these woods like the back of his hand. He rarely spoke, but when he did, everyone listened. The first 2 weeks were routine. We set up camp, mapped the sites, and began excavating. The weather was good, the mosquitoes were manageable. We were finding the usual artifacts: arrowheads, ceramic fragments, the remains of hearths. Everything pointed to a settlement of ancient hunter-gatherers, preliminarily dated to around 10,000 years ago. Standard, but important work. We were pleased. And then we found Mound Alpha, as we dubbed it. It was the largest and most remote of the group. Joe was reluctant to take us there. He didn't say don't go, but there was a weight to his voice. He said the elders of his tribe called the area the Land of Broken Bones and gave it a wide berth. They said old sorrows sleep there. I was respectful, of course, but as a scientist I couldn't ignore a potentially significant burial site. I assured him we would be extremely careful and reverent. He looked at me with his eyes, dark as forest pools, and just nodded. But from that day on, he stopped smiling entirely. The dig at Mount Alpha started slow. The soil was dense, rocky. But on the third day, Leo's pickaxe hit something hard. It was a bone, a massive one. Once we unearthed it, it was clearly a femur. But the size of it, I held it in my hands. And it was a good 1.5 feet longer than my own. I'm not a small man, 6'2". This bone belonged to a creature that must have stood over 9, maybe even 10 feet tall. Megafauna? Kate suggested, her eyes wide with excitement. Maybe some kind of giant ground sloth or a short-faced bear? But I could already see the shape of the bone was human, unmistakably. Anatomically, it was almost identical to Homo sapiens, just giant. We worked like madmen that day. By sunset, we had uncovered 3 skeletons. All of them were of incredible size. Men, women, even one child whose skeleton was as tall as a modern adult male. They were lying in a heap, not like a ritual burial, but as if their bodies had been unceremoniously dumped into a pit. And almost all of their bones were broken. Not just cracked, but viciously, furiously shattered. Multiple fractures on ribs, limbs, skulls. It was the scene of some prehistoric massacre. But that wasn't the strangest part. The strangest part was the marks on the bones. I took out my magnifying glass and began examining one of the tibias. The surface was riddled with deep gouges and punctures, tooth marks. That wasn't unheard of. Scavengers often disturb remains. But the size and shape of these marks. I called Kate and Leo over. We compared them to everything we knew. They were canine marks, Canidae, wolves, coyotes, dogs. But the distance between the canine teeth was 3, maybe 4 times wider than that of the largest gray wolf. The bite force, judging by the depth of the punctures in the bone, was astronomical. The animal that left these marks would have had to be the size of a grizzly bear, if not bigger. Maybe some extinct species of giant wolf? Leo muttered, photographing the damage. The dire wolf, Canis dirus, was big, but not this big. I didn't answer. I just stared at those horrific marks, and a chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the evening air. I pictured a pack of bear-sized wolves tearing these giants apart. What kind of monstrous strength would it take to shatter the bones of creatures this large? Joe came over as the sun was setting behind the trees. He silently looked at the excavation pit, at the enormous skeletons, at our pale, excited, and slightly terrified faces. His gaze lingered on the bite marks. He said nothing, just shook his head and went to prepare dinner. No one joked around the campfire that night. The air was heavy with unspoken questions. It was then, just as I was about to pack up for the day, that my brush hit something small and smooth next to the skull of the largest giant. I carefully cleared the dirt away. It was a small object about 4 inches long, made of bone. It was hollow, with several holes drilled along its length and one at the end. It was a whistle. It was skillfully carved from a phalanx bone, a finger bone, whose finger I could only guess. The surface was polished smooth by thousands of touches. It was etched with a primitive pattern of spirals and chevrons, and something else. A faint engraving depicting two figures. One was tall, like the giants in the grave. The other looked like a wolf standing on its hind legs. Like a man. I placed the whistle in a specimen bag, but a strange feeling lingered. This object wasn't just a tool or an ornament, it felt personal, important. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in my tent listening to the crackle of the dying campfire and the chirping of crickets. The forest sounds that usually soothed me now felt ominous. Every snapping twig made me jump. I felt like someone was watching from just beyond the thin fabric of my tent, in the impenetrable darkness between the trees. Waiting. I wrote it off as exhaustion and the thrill of the discovery. But when I finally drifted off, I had a strange dream. I was standing at the edge of the pit, but it wasn't night. It was a blood-red twilight. The air was thick with the smell of copper and raw meat. In the pit weren't skeletons, but the fresh, mangled bodies of the giants. And standing over them were they. Huge, wolf-like creatures. But they weren't wolves. They stood on two legs, their front paws like hands with long black claws. Their eyes burned with yellow fire in the gloom. They were covered in coarse black fur, and saliva dripped from their fanged snouts. They weren't growling. They were laughing. A quiet, guttural, bubbling laugh. One of them turned its head and looked right at me. In its paw it held the bone whistle. It raised it to its snout, and I woke up in a cold sweat to a piercing, soul-freezing sound. A sound that wasn't there. The camp was silent. The next few days were spent in a tense flurry of work. We meticulously documented, photographed, and packed the remains. Kate and Leo seemed to have recovered from the initial shock and were fully immersed in the scientific implications of the find. They chattered endlessly about theories and hypotheses. But I couldn't shake the dream. The image of the laughing wolfmen was burned into my mind. Joe became even more withdrawn and sullen. He started wearing an amulet around his neck that I hadn't seen before, and I saw him several times muttering in his native tongue while staring into the woods. One evening, I worked up the courage to ask him about the legends of this place. He was silent for a long time, staring into the fire. Then he spoke. "My grandfather said there are old hunters, neither man nor beast. They come on the darkest nights when the moon hides. They hunt those who disturb the peace of the land. Their hunger cannot be sated. They are the land's anger, its teeth." "Who are you talking about, Joe?" I asked. He looked up at me, and for the first time I saw fear in his eyes. "The ones who change their skin. Those who walk on two legs but run on four. The ones who wiped out the ancient giants because they envied their strength, and they left their bones here, as a warning. I am a man of science. I believe in facts, evidence, carbon dating. But in that moment, sitting by a campfire in the middle of nowhere, listening to the old man's quiet voice, I believed him. Every cell in my body screamed that he was telling the truth. The weirdness started on the fourth night after the discovery. First, we heard a howl. It wasn't the howl of a normal wolf. It was deeper, more resonant, and it had a horrifying, intelligent quality to it. It echoed through the valley, and the very ground seemed to vibrate in response. Every animal in the forest went silent. Even the crickets. A dead, ringing silence fell, broken only by that terrifying sound. Leo tried to joke that it was just a lone male looking for a pack, but his laugh was nervous and hollow. We all knew that wasn't it. The next night, something circled our camp. We didn't see it, but in the morning, we found tracks. Huge, shaped like a wolf's, but the size of my hand. And they were deep, as if the creature that made them was incredibly heavy. The tracks formed a perfect circle around our camp, about 50 yards out. As if something had been on patrol, studying us. Joe examined the tracks, and his face went ashen. He said only one word: Scout. That night, none of us slept. We sat by the fire, rifles at the ready. Joe had his old hunting rifle, and I had the shotgun I always took on expeditions for bears. Leo and Kate huddled together, their faces pale in the firelight. Around 2 a.m., a loud crack came from the woods, like someone snapping a young tree in half. Then another, and another. The sounds were getting closer. These weren't the steps of an animal. This was a heavy, methodical tread. Something enormous was crashing through the undergrowth, making no effort to be stealthy. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would break through. I gripped my shotgun tighter, my palms slick with sweat. I stared into the darkness beyond the ring of firelight, trying to see anything. And then I saw them. Eyes. 2 pairs of yellow, glowing eyes. They were high off the ground, much higher than a wolf or even a moose. They just stared at us from between the trees, unblinking. Kate let out a quiet sob. Leo sat frozen, his mouth hanging open in terror. Joe slowly raised his rifle. "Don't shoot," he whispered. "Not until you see all of them. Don't just make them angry." The eyes vanished. For a few minutes there was silence. And then we heard it. The laugh. That same quiet, guttural, bubbling laugh from my nightmare. It came from all around us. It felt like the forest itself was laughing at us. We sat like that until dawn. Nothing else appeared. But we knew they were out there, watching. The next day, we decided to pack it in. The scientific discovery didn't matter anymore. All that mattered was getting out of there alive. We worked in a feverish rush, throwing equipment and artifacts into crates. I personally packed the bone whistle, slipping it into my jacket pocket. I don't know why, but I felt I had to take it with me. As we loaded the last box into our old Land Rover, Joe came up to me. "They know you disturbed their grave," he said quietly. "And they know you took their thing." "What thing?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "The whistle. It's not just a whistle. It is a call. It calls the hunters. But it also keeps them at bay. It belonged to one who tried to control them. He failed." He looked at me. "They will come for it. They will follow you until they have it back. Or until they have you." I wanted to tell him it was nonsense, superstition, but I couldn't. I had seen the tracks. I had heard the howl. I had seen the eyes. We drove down that gravel road as fast as the truck could handle. Every second I expected to see giant black shapes burst from the trees in the rearview mirror, but there was no pursuit. When we hit the paved highway and saw the lights of town, I was able to breathe for the first time in days. We dropped Joe off at his reservation. He wouldn't take the money I offered him. He just said, "Be careful, Adam Wright. The world is older than men like you think, and it has teeth." I never saw him again. Back at the university, I tried to report what happened. I talked to my department head, to the dean. I showed them the photos of the bones, the tracks. I told them what we saw and heard. They looked at me like I was insane. They blamed it on altitude sickness, stress, hallucinations. The tracks. Probably just an abnormally large wolf or bear. The howl. The wind in the rocks. The eyes in the dark. A trick of the light. They tactfully ignored my description of giant wolfmen and changed the subject. They suggested I take a leave of absence, get some rest, pull myself together. Kate and Leo didn't back up my story either. Not that they called me a liar. They just went silent. When I tried to talk to them, they'd look away, saying they were too scared to see anything clearly, that it was probably just their imaginations. I could see the same fear in their eyes that I felt in mine, but they had chosen denial. They wanted to forget. I don't blame them. Analysis of the giant's bones confirmed their anomalous size, but wrote it off as some unknown form of gigantism. The bite marks were labeled inconclusive and requiring further study. My career was on the verge of collapsing. I was becoming the weirdo who'd breathed in too much mountain air and cracked. I was left alone with my fear. And the whistle. I live in a small house on the edge of town, right next to a wooded park. I used to love it here. The quiet, the nature. Now I hate it, because they followed me. It started about a month after I got back. At first, it was just the feeling of being watched. Walking home from the university, I'd feel like something dark was flitting through the shadows. Sitting in my study late at night, I'd catch movement out of the corner of my eye, just outside the window. Then I started finding the tracks. In my backyard, huge wolf prints, same as the ones in the woods. One or two at first, then dozens. They were walking in circles around my house. Every night. The police found nothing. "Probably just a big dog, sir," a tired cop told me, shining his flashlight on a blurry print in the mud. Then came the sounds. Scraping claws on the roof at night. A low, guttural growl coming from the hedges. And sometimes, on the quietest, most moonless nights, I'd hear that howl again. Distant, full of longing and hunger. It was farther away than in the mountains, but I knew it was them. I've barricaded the windows and doors. I installed security cameras. I bought a new, more powerful shotgun. I barely sleep. I've lost weight. I look like a ghost. My colleagues avoid me. I think they believe I've finally gone completely insane. Maybe they're right. The cameras show nothing. They just glitch out for a few minutes during the darkest part of the night. And when they come back on, there are new tracks on the ground. I know they're waiting. I don't know what for. Maybe they're studying me. Maybe they're savoring my fear. Or maybe they're just waiting for the right moment. The bone whistle is sitting on my desk as I write this. I hold it every day. I've thought about throwing it away 1,000 times, burying it somewhere, but I'm afraid. Joe said it calls them, but it also keeps them at bay. What if it's the only thing keeping them from breaking down my door? What if they just want it back? And what if I blow it? The thought is driving me crazy. What would happen? Would they leave? Or would it be the signal to attack? Maybe the whistle isn't a weapon, but a sign of submission. A sign that I accept their dominion. 2 nights ago, the worst thing yet happened. I woke up to a strange smell. The smell of wet dog, rotten meat, and the ozone tang of an approaching thunderstorm. It was strong. It was in my room. I froze, terrified to breathe. I slowly opened my eyes. Moonlight was filtering through a gap in the curtains, and I saw it. A shadow in the corner of the room. It was tall, taller than a man. Its shape was wrong. I could make out the silhouette of a long snout of pointed ears. It just stood there, and I could hear quiet, steady breathing. It wasn't human. I don't know how long I lay there, paralyzed with terror. A minute? An hour? It felt like an eternity. I stared at the shadow and it stared back. I could feel its gaze, even though I couldn't see its eyes. Then, slowly, silently, it receded and melted away. In the morning, I found a few long, coarse black hairs on the floor in that corner and scratches on the hardwood, deep, like they were made by blades. They had been in my house. They can get in whenever they want. The locks, the bars, the shotgun, it's all useless. It's a game. They're playing with me. I'm writing this because I don't know what else to do. I'm on the edge. I don't know if I'll survive another night. The whistle is in front of me. I look at it, and I feel like it's looking back. I think I know what I have to do. I can't live like this anymore. I have to know. If this post just ends here, it means I made my choice. It means I blew the whistle. And if you ever find yourself in some wild, remote place and you find bones that shouldn't exist, I'm begging you, walk away. Don't touch anything. Don't disturb what sleeps in the earth. Because some sorrows are best left undisturbed, and they have teeth, and they are very, very hungry. Update. Thanks, everyone. I didn't expect this much support. I've read all your comments. The advice, the theories, the words of encouragement. It means more than you can possibly imagine. Just knowing I'm not alone, that someone believes me, it helps. A little. Many of you advised me to leave, to drop everything and run. I've thought about it. I think about it every day. But where would I run? Joe said they would follow me. If they could find my house thousands of miles from that mound, they can find me anywhere. I can't run forever. Some of you asked for details about the whistle. I took a few pictures. The quality isn't great, my hands are shaking. But you can see the patterns in that engraving. The giant and the werewolf. I don't know what else to call it. I also tried to find more information on the local legends. It's difficult. Most of the folklore was oral and has been lost. But I found something in an old, dusty collection of regional tribal myths I dug up in the university library. There's a story about the first people, a race of giants who lived on the land when it was still young. They were wise and strong, but proud. And there's a story of the whisperers in the shadows, or those who wear the wolf skin. They were spirits or demons who were jealous of the first people. They could change their shape, shifting from man to a massive wolf. The legend says there was a war between them, long and bloody. The whisperers were weaker individually, but they were cunning, vicious, and numerous. They hunted in packs. They broke the first people, exterminating every last one. The legend says the leader of the whisperers was a powerful shaman who could control the pack with a flute made from the finger bone of the giant king. The sound of this flute could strike terror into the hearts of his enemies and call the pack to the hunt. I read that, and the hair on my arms stood up. It can't be a coincidence. Last night was quiet. Too quiet. No sounds, no new tracks. That scares me more than their presence. It's like the calm before a storm. They're planning something. I haven't touched the whistle. It's still on my desk. Sometimes I think I can feel it vibrating. A faint, barely perceptible hum. Like something inside it is waking up. One commenter suggested they don't want to kill me. That they want me. Maybe they think that as the holder of the whistle, I could be their new leader. Or they want to perform some kind of ritual. That's an even more terrifying thought than a quick death in their claws. I need to clarify something. When I found the skeletons, there weren't 3. There were 4. The 4th was off to the side, almost completely destroyed. And next to it, I found something else I didn't mention before. A fragment of tanned hide, like parchment. It had drawings on it, pictographs. I brought it with me. It was too fragile, and I was afraid it would disintegrate. I've spent the last 48 hours trying to decipher it. I've used all my knowledge of paleolinguistics, comparing the symbols to other known petroglyphs. Most of it was indecipherable. But one fragment I figured out. It wasn't just a story of a war. It was an instruction manual. The drawings show a giant surrounded by the wolf men. The giant is holding the whistle. He brings it to his lips. The next drawing shows the wolf men retreating, bowing their heads. But there's another sequence. The giant blows the whistle again, but this time he's holding it differently, and blood is dripping from his fingers onto the whistle. And in this drawing, the wolf men aren't retreating. They are lunging at him. There was another symbol that repeated over and over. A symbol of the moon. Not a full or crescent moon. A moon that isn't visible. The night of no moon. The dark moon. Tonight is the new moon. I think I understand. The whistle is a key, a tool of control, but it requires a payment, a sacrifice, blood. If you just blow it, it might drive them away. The sound, as a sign of authority, subdues them. But if you blow it after anointing it with your own blood, it doesn't repel them. It empowers them. It removes some kind of restraint. It's a signal not to retreat, but to feast. And I think the giant who owned this whistle made a mistake. In his desperation, surrounded by his enemies, he tried to use the artifact's darkest power, and it destroyed him, and everyone else. So now I have a choice. I can do nothing. Wait for them to break down the door. And they will. I'm sure of it. Tonight's silence is their patience. They're waiting for the new moon. I can try blowing the whistle, just like that. Risk that it will scare them off. But what if the legend is wrong? What if any sound is a summons? Or I can do what the parchment says. Give them what they want. Not just the whistle, but the whistle anointed with blood. Maybe if I give them that, they'll be sated and leave. Leave me alone. It's insane, I know. It's like trying to appease a pack of sharks by throwing them a drop of blood. I'm sitting here in the dark. Every light in the house is off. I'm looking out the window at an inky, starless, moonless sky. I can feel their presence. It's everywhere. The air has grown thick and cold. I can hear them breathing just outside the walls of my house. I'm writing this as a sort of last will, an explanation. If they find me, or what's left of me, I want someone to know the truth. I've made a decision. I'm not going to sit here and wait like a lamb for the slaughter, and I'm not going to try to control them. I'm not a first person. I'm not a giant. I'm just a terrified archaeologist who dug too deep. I'm going to give them the whistle, but I'm not just going to hand it to them. There's an old, abandoned quarry a few miles from my house, a deep pit with sheer rock walls. I'm going there. I'll leave the whistle on the edge of the cliff, and I'll hide and watch. Maybe having reclaimed their relic, they'll just leave. Go back to their dark corners of the world and sleep for another 10,000 years. Or maybe this is a trap and I'm walking into my own execution. I don't know, but it's better than sitting here, going mad with fear. I'm taking the shotgun, a flashlight, and the whistle. I'm posting this update, and then I'm leaving. If you don't hear from me in 24 hours, assume my experiment failed. Don't look for me. And for God's sake, if you ever hear a long, inhuman howl in the woods, run and don't look back. Final update. I'm alive. Barely. I don't know how to start. My hands are shaking so bad I can barely hit the keys. I'm not writing this from my house. I'm in a motel hundreds of miles away. I don't think I can ever go home. I did what I planned. I drove to the quarry. It was midnight. It was a pitch-black, needle-in-your-eye kind of dark. Even my headlights seemed to get swallowed up by it. I drove to the edge of the pit, got out, and left the engine running. The wind howled between the rocks, and every gust sounded like a whisper. I placed the bone whistle on a large, flat rock right at the edge of the abyss. It looked so small and insignificant under the vast black sky. Then I backed away. I didn't hide far. I climbed onto the roof of my car for a better view. I had my shotgun loaded with silver buckshot. Yeah, silver. One of you in the comments suggested it. I figured it couldn't hurt. I felt like an idiot, but fear makes you do idiotic things. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Nothing. Just the howling wind. I was starting to think I really was crazy. That here I was, sitting on my car roof in the middle of the night in an abandoned quarry because of my own runaway imagination. And then I heard them. It wasn't a howl or a growl. It was the sound of heavy bodies moving through the brush. The snap of branches, the crunch of rocks under enormous paws. They were coming from all sides. They were surrounding the quarry. And then I saw them. They appeared first on the crest of the ridge, their silhouettes outlined against the slightly less black night sky. They were exactly as they were in my dream. Huge. Taller than a man. They moved on 2 legs but hunched over like hyenas. Their long, clawed arms nearly touched the ground. I couldn't make out details, just their general shape. And there were so many of them. 12, maybe more. They stopped at the perimeter of the quarry, looking down at the small bone whistle. A silence fell. Even the wind died down. They just stood and stared. I wasn't breathing. My heart had stopped. Then one of them, the largest, who stood directly across the quarry from me, took a step forward. It moved slowly, with a terrifying, primal grace. It made its way down the scree slope to the ledge where the whistle lay. As it got closer, I could see it clearly. Its body was covered in thick black fur, matted and filthy. Muscles like steel cables rolled under its hide. It had a long, wolfish snout with massive fangs that jutted from beneath black lips. But its eyes were intelligent, full of an ancient, malevolent wisdom. It looked at the whistle. Then it raised its head and looked directly at me. It knew I was there. It had known the whole time. It made a low, guttural sound, somewhere between a cough and a laugh. Then it reached out its massive, paw-like hand and picked up the whistle. It didn't bring it to its mouth. It just closed its fist around it. The bone crunched and turned to dust in its grip. My plan had failed. They didn't just want their relic back. They wanted it destroyed, and me with it. The leader looked at me again and let out a howl. But this wasn't the long, mournful sound I'd heard before. This was a battle cry, short, furious, a call to the attack. And the entire pack charged at me. I don't remember getting off the roof and into the driver's seat. I just remember slamming my foot on the gas. The engine roared, and the car shot forward. In my rearview mirror, I saw black shadows leaping out of the darkness. They were running on all fours now, and their speed was incredible. They were keeping up. One of them leaped onto the trunk. The car bucked. I heard the screech of claws on metal and the sound of the rear window shattering. I swerved side to side, trying to throw it off. Then another impact from the side. I saw a fanged snout in my side window. It slammed into the glass, which spiderwebbed with cracks. I grabbed the shotgun from the passenger seat and, without aiming, fired through the side window. The blast inside the car was deafening. The creature shrieked and fell away, but they were still behind me. I could see them in the mirrors, glowing yellow eyes in the dark. I tore out onto the road leading away from the quarry. There was a sharp turn ahead. I didn't make it. The car skidded, hit a rock face, flipped, and rolled down an embankment. Everything went into slow motion. The shriek of twisting metal, the tinkle of shattering glass, my own scream. The car came to rest on its roof. I was hanging from my seatbelt. My head was ringing. My vision was swimming. I smelled gasoline. I knew I only had seconds. I unbuckled my belt, fell onto what was now the ceiling. I kicked out the remains of the windshield and crawled out. They were already coming down the slope, taking their time. They knew I was trapped. I scrambled to my feet. My whole body ached, but adrenaline drove me on. I ran. I just ran into the woods, away from them. I could hear their heavy breathing behind me. I could hear them laughing. I don't know how long I ran. I stumbled, fell, got up, and ran again. Branches whipped my face. My lungs were on fire. I was sure that any second I would feel their hot breath and sharp teeth on my neck. And then I burst out onto a highway. I saw the headlights of an approaching truck. I ran into the middle of the road, waving my arms, screaming. The driver, thank God, managed to slam on the brakes. He jumped out of his cab, yelling at me. And then he looked past me, to the edge of the woods. His face went white. He silently pointed to the open door of his cab. I scrambled inside, he followed, and we peeled out. "What in the hell was that?" he asked when we were a few miles down the road. His voice was shaking. "I don't know," I lied. He didn't ask any more questions. He just drove me to the nearest town, dropped me at this motel, said, "Good luck, kid, and stay out of the woods," and drove off. So here I am. I have nothing but the clothes on my back and the cash in my wallet. All my research, all my evidence. It all burned up in the car, or is back in my house. No one will ever believe me? But I know what I saw. They destroyed the whistle. I think it was a symbol of their subjugation. As long as it existed, they were bound to it, to its power. Now they're free. I didn't just wake them up. I unleashed them. I don't know what they'll do now. Maybe they'll go to ground again. Or maybe they'll start hunting. I only know one thing. They saw my face. They know my scent. And they know I'm the only one who knows their secret. They might decide they can't leave a witness. So I'm going to run. Change my name. Change towns. Always look over my shoulder. Always listen to the silence of the night, waiting to hear that familiar howl. This isn't a r/na sleep post anymore. This is my life. If you're reading this, take it as a warning. The world you know is a thin shell, and underneath it, something ancient, dark, and hungry is churning. I accidentally punched a hole in that shell. And now, I'm afraid the monsters are getting out. Be safe, and don't go into the woods at night, ever.